The big day is finally here. The 2025-2026 season tips off tonight as the Orlando Magic take on the Miami Heat. We've got Locked On Heat on the show to preview the season, the game, and everything else today on Locked On Magic.
You are Locked On Magic, your daily Orlando Magic podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And you are indeed Locked On Magic. Today is October 21st. It will be October 22nd. Happy NBA New Year. My name is Philip Rossman-Reich. I'm the senior writer over at OrlandoMagicDaily.com, credentialed member of the Orlando Magic media since the 2012 season. On today's episode of Locked On Magic, we are joined by our friends Wes Goldberg and David Ramil of Locked On Heat to preview the seasons for the Orlando Magic to Miami Heat, the key matchups in tonight's game, and what's at stake in Game 1 of 82. We're going to dive into that over the next 30-plus minutes or so. We'll get to that coming up here in just a moment. But first, we want to thank you again for making Locked On Magic part of your day every day, no matter when you listen to us, whether it's first thing in the morning, whether it's right we upload. We truly appreciate you making Locked On Magic part of your day every day. We appreciate all of our Orlando Magic dailies who make Locked On Magic part of their day, Monday through Friday, and on the weekends after games. We truly appreciate all of you who make Locked On Magic your first listen of the day. It's all part of Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. I want to get to the conversation I had with Wes Goldberg and David Ramil of Locked On Heat here as soon as I can, but I would be remiss if I didn't add this addendum or this prologue or this this is a prologue. Yes. I'm not doing English today. But this prologue before we get going. We recorded on Monday. Things have changed. Things have happened. While they won't substantively affect the conversation, I will note that we recorded on Monday when we talk about this specific issue and this specific player, but Jalen Suggs has been upgraded to questionable. He was listed as questionable on the Magic's injury report. Jamal Mosley reported that he had a good practice on Tuesday, a good practice on Monday, and that he is now doing 5-on-5 contact drills. All signs are pointing toward the very, very, very likely possibility that Jalen Suggs will be ready to play on opening night, just as Jeff Weltman promised, just as Jalen Suggs hoped for back on Media Day. Now, that isn't for certain, as Jamal Mosley has said every time. It is always about how Jalen feels the next day, whether he is feeling better, how he responds to treatment, how he responds to pressure. He'll obviously be under some type of minute restriction. I wouldn't expect him to play in both games this weekend and be sitting out of back-to-backs for the short term. But it does feel like after a preseason where the Magic were never quite fully whole, not at least until that last game against New Orleans, minus Jalen Suggs, it does feel like they are going to be as healthy as possible. Mo Wagner obviously still out with the torn ACL, but the Magic are going to be as healthy as they could hope to be entering this first game, entering this critical season for the Orlando Magic. It's obviously a huge deal, as so many players on the Magic have said. Jalen Suggs is the quote-unquote head of the snake on offense. He is the guy that gives them their energy, drives them to be the hounding, scary defensive team that everybody knows that they are. And so with that, let's dive in to this first game. Game number 1, Orlando Magic versus Miami Heat, a rivalry as old as time itself, if we start counting at 1988. A really big matchup, a rematch of last year's opening night when the Magic went down to Miami and housed the Heat, just absolutely demolished them, especially in that third quarter. It was a major statement game. What statement will be made this year? Let's get into it with David Ramil and Wes Goldberg of Locked On Heat.
All right, welcome to a crossover episode between Locked On Heat and Locked On Magic. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily. I'm here with my Locked On Heat co-host, David Ramil, and the host of Locked On Magic, Philip Rossman-Reich. However, you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks so much for making Locked On Heat and Locked On Magic your first listen every day. We are here to preview tonight's season opener, Heat at Magic, Southeast Division matchup to kick things off this season. We're going to talk about the key matchups in this game. We're going to talk about what both teams have at stake early in the season. But before we do all of that, guys, probably should just quickly set the stage for what both of these teams did in the offseason and what we got heading into this thing. So for the Magic, really quick, they dealt with injuries last year to Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner for a bulk of the season. They finished 41-41, lose to the Celtics in the first round in the summer. They trade for Desmond Bane. They signed Tyus Jones, all in an effort to improve this offense and make a run in the Eastern Conference. For the Heat, they didn't deal with injuries like Orlando, but they did deal with their superstar going AWOL, Jimmy Butler hijacking the season with a trade demand. They finished 37-45. They win 2 straight games on the road in the play-in tournament to make the playoffs, where they get swept convincingly by the Cavs in the first round. In the offseason, they trade for Norm Powell as their big acquisition, and they are hoping to compete for the playoffs in their first season of the post-Jimmy Butler era. So that's the elevator pitch on what's going on here. But Philip, I want to start with you as we dive deeper into this thing. What is the biggest storyline going into the season for the Orlando Magic?
I think the biggest storyline, and thanks for having me, and always good to have you guys on Locked On Magic as well. I think the biggest storyline for the Magic is whether they can take the leap into contention. As you mentioned, like last year, they were just injured. Like they were just so hurt. Jalen Suggs, Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner played only 6 games and I believe 97 minutes together total. So, anytime you're not able to have your 3 best players on the floor at the same time for significant time, you're not going to reach your potential. And so the Magic went from a team that was 47 wins, looked like a team on the rise, to one that was just kind of scuttling in the middle, and injuries were a big part. And so the Magic making the move for Desmond Bane was kind of a clear statement of, no, we have enough to compete for something bigger than just getting to the playoffs and getting to the first round. And the Magic have been very, very open about this, like oddly so. We believe we can win a championship. Maybe not this year, but we believe we're on a championship track and that we're working toward toward winning a championship. And so I think this season for the Magic is very much figuring out, like, do they actually have enough? Is this investment that they made in Franz Wagner, a max contract that kicks in this year, Paolo Banchero, Rose Rule max that kicks in next year, Desmond Bane with the 2 rotation players and 4 first-round picks and the long-term contract he's under, it's whether this team can actually reach that ceiling. They need to kind of show hints that with a little bit more seasoning, a little bit more experience, that they can be a factor in the Eastern Conference.
What's the end goal there with the Magic then? Because you said that the team believes that they're a championship contender, but rooting for incremental growth isn't much of a slogan heading into the season. So what is it? The Eastern Conference Finals? Is that what they view their final level being this season? And is it just about making some growth whatsoever, or is it ultimately a title a realistic goal for that team?
Yeah, for this year's team, I think it's a little fudgy. Like at the bare minimum, they need to accomplish what they hoped to accomplish last year. Like last year at Media Day, everybody was saying we need home court advantage. We lost all our road games in that 7-game series with the Cavs. Get us home court advantage. We're going to be in the second round, and then we'll see kind of where we measure up against the teams that we expected to be competing for a championship. They got that anyway, playing Boston in the first round and saying like, oh no, we're actually quite a long way away. And so I think what the Magic want to do is get to the second round. If they could get to the conference finals, great. No one's going to complain about that. But I think what they want to see is get to the conference finals. The Knicks and the Cavs are kind of universally the favorites to win the East. Be competitive, not just be competitive, like push those teams around, give yourself a chance to beat them. And maybe the only reason you lose is that you've never been here before, is that you've never been in the second round. You've never won a playoff series, and you just need that playoff scar to teach you how to get to that next level. I think that's what the Magic are looking for. And then, obviously, like they've got this core group for probably 3 or 4 years before they really start feeling the financial burden of it. I think they want to win a title in the next 3 or 4 years.
So again, a big part of what the Magic are trying to do, and you quote this stat all the time on Locked On Magic, how they've just been in the bottom 10 in offense for like the last bajillion years, basically. They add Bane, they add Tyus Jones. Based on what you saw in the preseason so far, like, do you think they are? Where would you expect the Magic to end up offensively? Providing a full bill of health here.
I think they'll end up somewhere in the middle, like in the middle of the pack. I did my bold predictions. I went ahead and said, I just was like, screw it. I'm stealing. I'm sick. I'm on NyQuil. I'm recording this. Let me go ahead and say it. They'll finish in the top half. I don't know. I'll
wow.
A little bit
Spicy.
Yeah, spicy. I gotta be a little spicy sometimes. But I think they'll finish somewhere near the middle of the pack in offensive rating. I think that you guys saw them play the Heat play them twice in the preseason. There's this like and the Heat were the same way. I felt like there's this overemphasis on pace throughout the preseason games. There's just like, just go out and run. Don't worry about anything else. Just run on everything that you can. And I think that's going to help kind of spark the Magic to, get a few more possessions, a few more bites at the apple, get them moving a little bit more. The space that Desmond Bane provides is going to help a little bit with that too. But I think there'll still be moments where those old habits offensively kind of pop out. If they have any kind of injury to their three main offensive players, so that's Paolo, Franz, or Bane, if they have to miss any time, I think that limits what they can do offensively off the bench. So I think there'll be some cold spots and some areas where the Magic are still kind of falling back into those bad habits. But generally, I think the Magic's offense will at least be competent, which we haven't seen in Orlando in a very long time.
David, I'm curious what you think about the Magic, because we haven't talked about this, but maybe you have unlocked on NBA Game Night. But let's say hypothetically they do their 15th in offensive rating by the end of the year, top 5 in defensive rating. I think most people would assume for Orlando in the Eastern Conference. I mean, that gives them that's a chance, right?
A chance at being one of the top 4 seeds in the East. Sure, I could.
Sure, maybe making a run to the conference finals.
I don't know. I'm still not quite a believer, and maybe it's just I'm a little bit jaded regarding teams that are considered to be young, because you never know what they're capable of. And Philip, you referenced this as well. You want to be able to see what you're capable of, and you don't believe in a team until they prove it. Maybe this is the year, but I just, to me, the Magic are still missing something, and I'm not quite sure what that is, whether it's a leadership gap or whether or not it's an experienced veteran player who's been there before and can take them over that hump. I think the potential is there. I love their defense. I love their identity. The team is fun to watch in its own way, because obviously offense has been historically such a struggle for this group. But you look at them, and I'm still think there's something missing that keeps them from being able to be one of those teams that can consider themselves in the upper echelon. They'll contend, they'll beat you up, they'll make you pay for whatever it is that they're going to get done, in a lot of ways mirroring what the Heat have done. But the difference between what we saw from the Heat over the last few seasons is they had a stone cold killer in Jimmy Butler who was just willing to do whatever it took. And I don't know that player exists on the Magic roster. So that's what I would see as being the major difference. But I like their potential as being a top 4 seed. I just don't know if they can get past and achieve the goals that we talked about earlier.
I think I'm a little bit more bullish than you, David. I kind of like this Magic team. I'm just a believer in Paolo. That's really, I think he becomes that guy. I think he maybe makes that type of leap this year. Let's look at Miami. David, what do you think is the biggest storyline for the Heat?
What is this team? I think that's the big question right there. We just talked about Jimmy Butler. That was the era that defined this group. They overachieved in every way, just like Jimmy himself. So they kind of mirrored his personality, which has been the team ethos for as long as Pat Riley's been at the head of it since 1995. So right now is a new era where they're kind of redefining themselves without a superstar on the roster. You've got Bam Adebayo, you've got Tyler Hero, who's nursing an injury, but will eventually be back, and Norm Powell. So you have all-star level players, none of which are a real superstar who can carry this team. So it's about finding their own identity without Jimmy and being able to contend in an Eastern Conference that is considered to be wide open, and seeing whether or not they might be able to make the playoffs. I think that's their goal for the season. I think they would say that they can contend for a title. I don't think anybody actually believes them. Maybe they hold that internal belief, and that's something they could afford to have a high view of themselves when Jimmy was on the roster, knowing again that he was capable of carrying them to greater heights. I just don't know that this group, as currently constructed, is still as good as they were in the past. So just trying to find out who they really are. I mean, you and I have talked about it a lot, because this group is still never really played together, not much experience as a group in total. You know, the lineups are still kind of figuring their way out. The offense still looks like it's going to be a little bit plodding.
Mm-hmm.
The defense could be inconsistent at times. So there's questions about this group and who steps up to carry them, who leads this team and is able to push them as they're going through the doldrums of the midseason, et cetera. There's a lot of questions there, and I'm just not sure what the identity of this group is just yet.
Philip, I want to get your take on your perspective on everything that's going on with the Miami Heat post Jimmy Butler. I want to do that. I also want to look ahead to the game and talk about the key matchups that are going to decide the season opener. We'll do all of that after this here on this Locked On Heat, Locked On Magic crossover episode.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Every day we make decisions, but on Prize Picks, being right can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with Prize Picks, where it's good to be right. Playing Prize Picks is such a fun, simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley's rushing for a touchdown, and yeah, you're in the game. You'll love how quick it is. You can make your lineup in under a minute, and Prize Picks has just added stacks. So if you want to ride with a player, you can select their pass yards or rush yards, touchdowns, whatever, all in one lineup. There's so many great features. You'll love all of them, and it makes everything so easy to play. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Today's episode is also brought to you by Built. Nobody likes paying rent, but if you must, you might as well get something for it. That's where Built comes in. Built is changing the game by turning your rent payment into real rewards that you can actually use. When you pay rent through Built, you earn flexible points that can be redeemed toward hundreds of hotels and airlines, a future rent payment, your next Lyft ride, and much more. But Built isn't just about rent. It's about rewarding you around your entire neighborhood. I love that with Built, your rent finally works for you. You're earning points every month on something you already have to pay. Might as well get some reward for it too. Turn your rent into rewards and start earning points around your neighborhood by going to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNBA. That's JOINBILT.com/LockedOnNBA. And make sure to use that link so they know that we sent you. We'll be right back.
So, Philip, don't take this the wrong way, but I think for a very long time, the Magic were sort of the younger brother to the Miami Heat. It was very Don Draper meme. Like, you know, we think about you all the time. I never think about you at all. And it doesn't feel that way anymore, right? The Orlando Magic are the team that's favored to win the Southeast Division, win more games. Like, that's the team that people are talking about. Hey, they could make a run in the Eastern Conference Finals, where most people are looking at the Heat and it's like, what even is this team? Like David was talking about post Jimmy Butler. But like, from your perspective, like, what is this Miami Heat team right now?
I think this Miami Heat team is a team that knows its identity. Like, you know, again, the Heat are still the Heat. Like, as much as we want to joke about Heat culture, and it's probably a little overplayed and a little overblown, but it's a real
Why would you
thing.
say that? Because they painted it on the court and made jerseys?
They brought it with them to Puerto Rico, and that was the worst. That was the worst part of the preseason.
I think they left it there.
I hope they left it there. Yeah. No, like, it's a real thing. Like, there's a tremendous amount of respect for how the Heat build their teams and the kind of players that they look for. And, you know, Miami has become like San Antonio. When they grab a player, you immediately go like, oh, that makes sense. You trust their decision-making process. Right now, Miami is just a team in search of like that star. Like they have a lot of really good players. Like, I love Bam Adebayo. I like Tyler Hero a lot. You know, the Norman Powell move was an amazing bargain move that was just, you know, we were all waiting for Miami to do something. And then they do that for what they did it for. It was just like, oh, this is Miami again, getting the guy that they need. But it just feels like they're missing, like, you know, there's a lot of like rebuilding teams that have a lot of really interesting young players that just need that one star to tie them together. The Magic were that for forever. They had a lot of really nice players that just no one to tie it all together. Miami is like that with veteran quality players. And it's just like, Jimmy Butler helped tie that together, you know, in the playoffs at least. Maybe not during the regular season as much, but during the playoffs, he certainly did. There's a reason why Miami always is hunting for a star. It's because they know that the star is what propels the team forward. They just have, I think, a lot of guys in the wrong roles, and they're still dangerous. They're still going to win their share of games because of the talent level and how good their coaching is too. I mean, I don't think Eric Spoelstra gets nearly enough credit for the job he's done coaching. There's just so few coaches that can win a championship and also can squeeze more out of mediocre teams than possible. And like Eric Spoelstra does, you know, Eric Spoelstra is a Hall of Famer. I don't think that's up for debate at this point with multiple championships, but even then, I don't think people talk about him enough. But Miami's just, I think, directionless. Like they don't have the North Star to kind of get them to fully maximize and fully realize the players they want to build around right now. Like, you know, I think we talked about this last year before opening day, how everyone was eager to see Bam Adebayo take on a bigger offensive role, you know, be a bit more of a 3-point shooter. And it just never really developed. You know, Tyler Hero, everyone wants him to be this, that, and the other. And he just might be a really good third option kind of sharpshooter, secondary playmaker, but you're asking him to be the primary guy on the ball. that's probably asking a little too much. And obviously he's going to miss Wednesday's game because of the injury. It just feels like they're sort of rudderless. Like they know the direction they're supposed to go, but they can't turn the ship in that direction.
They need a star. Bam would be a much more complete fan favorite type of player more consistently if they had just somebody scoring 27 points a game and he didn't have to do that and he could just do all the other things that make Bam an actually special player. And Tyler Hero, I agree with that. David and I have talked a lot about that stuff. Philip, I want to stick with you though. Let's talk about tonight's game. Wednesday night, Heat Magic in Orlando. Season opener for both of these teams. When you look at key matchups that are going to decide this specific game, what are you looking at?
I think the big thing I'm looking at is how the newcomers play in their first official game with the team. So Desmond Bane versus Norman Powell. On the Magic side of things, Desmond Bane didn't look fully unleashed, and it didn't look like the Magic quite understood how to use him yet. I think some of that was they wanted to have Des focus on his playmaking and kind of explore that part of his canvas less than his spacing and his shooting. He was like 1 for 9 or 2 for 9 on threes in 3 preseason games, which he'll take 9 3-pointers probably in Wednesday's game. So I don't think anyone's worried about him shooting unless there truly is something in the water in Orlando that just, takes away any player's ability to make a 3-point shot.
It exists down here too, Philip, so don't worry about it.
Yeah, it might exist. The fountain of youth comes at a cost, I suppose. But I'm really interested to see how these two teams integrate these two players. They're probably going to go head to head with each other.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how they use these two players and how they find comfort now that the guardrails of the preseason are off. There's no focus on this. There's no, you're only playing 20 minutes tonight. I want to see what these two players look like fully unleashed. And obviously the Magic have their defensive game plan. The Heat will have their defensive game plan. It'll be different than what we saw in the only game that they played each other in Puerto Rico. But I think that's going to be the most intriguing thing out of this game.
David, when you think about this game, what's the matchup that you're looking at?
Well, I had a question about Bane because I wonder. We're not quite sure about what the Heat starting lineup is going to be. Obviously, with Tyler Hero out, there's some questions there. So, is it possible that Davion Mitchell might get that assignment and try to pick up Bane to leave Powell kind of hiding on Tyus Jones? I mean, that's an option, right? But there's also the possibility that the front court is moved around too, with Kel'el Ware possibly starting, Nikola Jovic. We're not quite sure. I mean, it's easy to point at Banchero versus whomever is trying to guard him on the other side of things, but I just don't know who that's going to be. If it's Jovic,
that's what I have Paolo Banchero versus Heat defense because I think it's going to take all of them. They didn't do a good job in the season opener last year. He had 33 points and single-handedly beat the Heat in that season opener, and it was sort of like his coming out party and be like, hey, I'm here, I'm kind of making this leap, and then he got hurt shortly after that, but I mean, that was like Philip, right? He scored 33 points in the season opener, and he averaged 30-something points per game for that first week before he got hurt.
There's a 50-point game in there, so small sample size theater, but
still all in 1 week.
After the All-Star game, he averaged 29 points per game.
He's great.
I sat here the whole summer, and people were criticizing Paolo for his efficiency, and I'm like, guys, take out the month after his oblique injury. He averaged 29 points per game, 6-7 rebounds per game, 5-6 assists per game, and shot a 58.1 true shooting percentage after the All-Star break. He made the leap. Yeah. You just weren't paying attention.
Go ahead, David.
No, I've got Wendell Carter Jr. versus Bam Adebayo too. I think that's a big matchup. Yeah, that's I think we saw that matchup in the preseason kind of shift towards Carter a little bit. I mean, I think he's a pretty solid player. And if he can stay healthy, he can be an impactful guy for that Magic team that's kind of looking for somebody to really pop in that center position. So him versus Bam looks like it would be a fun matchup. I'm curious to see what version of Bam we get because he looked like he was really passive for almost 90% of the preseason. Then he had a big last game of the preseason. Is that going to carry over the regular season? And is he going to have the usual – I wouldn't go so far as to say dominance, but he's always had the edge over a guy like Carter. So I wonder if that's going to carry over in the season opener as well.
A big last game in the preseason, David, when he was starting next to Kel'el Ware. Maybe sending a little bit of a message to the coaching staff.
To that previous point, if I'm not mistaken, in previous Magic Heat matchups, it's Bam that gets the call on Paolo.
Mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't shock me if that's the matchup.
We could, and look, Ware sat out practice on Monday, so maybe there's no concerns about him missing opening night, but you do wonder if they try to limit him in any way. But I agree with David. I that's what I had written down. I actually had Bam and Khalil Ware versus Wendell Carter Jr. and Goga Batadze. I sort of expanded it to the entire center rotation there, because it's just going to be 48 minutes of those guys in some sort of mixing and matching going against each other. And you look at Carter and Batadze specifically, and they're just so physical. And like Batadze, his physicality, that could bother Khalil Ware, who I think is obviously more talented, but just not as seasoned. And with Bam, he could draw the Paolo assignment on some of these possessions, right? When he is playing with Ware, when Spo does get to that rotation, starting or otherwise, and that's a big defensive handful. And what can he do offensively if he's doing all of that defensively, or if he's at least being asked to do that defensively? So, I think that's it. Anything else before we get out of this?
The only thing, and we're recording this on Monday, so sorry if this is old news, but the other mystery is whether Jalen Suggs is going to play on Wednesday. It's pointing in the direction that he's not, but he's, he got a couple practices to ramp up. It's possible Jalen Suggs plays, and that throws another element of randomness into an already random game.
Davion Mitchell and Jalen Suggs just Spider-Man memeing at each other for for several Southeast Division games this season. Just seems like a fun thing. What will this game reveal about the Heat and the Magic? Are we going to have huge overreactions coming out of this one? What do both teams have at stake early this season? We'll answer all of that next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rougiette. Let's be real. Making excuses doesn't solve anything. We've all heard them before. It's just stress. I'm tired, or it happens to everyone sometimes. But when it comes to performance, sometimes your body just needs a little extra support, and that's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette.com offers fast-acting, doctor-prescribed treatments for ED designed to help you stop making excuses and start making moves. Rougiette makes it easy to get started. You just connect with a board-certified director 100% online. No awkward waiting rooms, no in-person appointments. If prescribed, your treatment ships discreetly straight to your door. The process is fast, simple, and private, and it's all handled by real doctors. It's about confidence, connection, and getting back to the moments that matter. So visit rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA to get 15% off your first order. That's rugiet.com/LockedOnNBA. And don't forget to use our code LockedOnNBA so they know we sent you. Rougiette, stop making excuses and start making moves. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making the Locked On Podcast Network your first listen every day. The best way to support these shows, like and subscribe on YouTube, follow us, and listen on your favorite podcast app. Let's talk big picture coming out of this game. Let's fast forward. Wednesday night's game is over. David, start with you. What might this game reveal about these teams early in the season?
Again, I think for Miami, it's just about trying to find out what this direction of the team is, who's going to carry them, who's going to be the player that is willing to take that next level, whether it's Powell, whether it's Bam. There's so many questions about this roster and how it all plays together. And so I think you're looking for some kind of spark, something, a team that desperately needs it. And so that's what I'm looking for in this matchup, is what version of Miami we get. And honestly, I think you asked a question before we went to break. I think it is something that's ripe for overreactions, because I think when you look at this team, you're so desperate to kind of see anything, some baseline for what this group is going to be like working together, that if they fall flat on their face and if they have a terrible game, it's ready to put up the end is nigh signs all over Biscayne Boulevard, because right now I just don't see what else this group is capable of. I just don't know if I'm a believer in what this team can be unless they start making some kind of impact early on, because we know what the schedule is like. It's going to be very difficult to start the season, so they need to be able to make a statement early on.
To your point, I think we almost underreacted this time last year when the Heat lost to the Magic, and we're like, it's kind of weird, whatever. Paolo had this crazy game. Like, how often is that going to happen? Turns out, like,
it's all going to work out. Like, regular season doesn't matter.
It was sort of the canary in the coal mine, right? Where, like, hey, this new system that Spo was trying to install offensively with the 5-out offense and the whole Terry Rozier thing, like, it wasn't working, and it looked disjointed in preseason. It looked disjointed on opening night against the Magic, and then it looked disjointed for the rest of the season. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to happen again this time if the Heat lose to the Magic, but I almost think that we should overreact as opposed to underreact the way we did last year. Like, if the Heat lose this game and they do it in a way that's disjointed, doesn't really look like they have a plan on offense, we're still sort of figuring this thing out. Yeah. I think we actually have to take that very seriously, because we saw that this time last year in terms of maybe being a red flag of, maybe this season is heading in a direction that we didn't really expect. Philip, what about you?
Yeah, that was kind of my take, was that last, like I always say this because I'm used to 30-point losses with the Orlando Magic over the last decade. 30-point losses say a lot more about the losing team than they do about the winning team. And I think that, the first game can be random. Like one game, there's always a little bit of randomness. There's a lot of newness. So, I don't think, like, I would advise Magic fans, if they lose to the Heat, it's not a reason for panic. Like if the offense looks like it's stuck in the mud again, like maybe that's an issue. If Desmond Bane shoots 1 for 5 from 3, like don't freak out about that. It's one game. He's going to have some duds over the course of an 82 game season. And it stinks that it's the first one and there's all these eyes on it, but that's how it goes. I do think, though, for the Magic, it's again, that feeling of, okay, we've got something, we've got something here. And that was something that I stressed throughout the preseason. The Magic went undefeated in the preseason for whatever that's worth. I know the Heat did not win in the preseason for whatever that's worth. And I would say, like, after all those games, like, okay, there was a moment in these games that felt like there's something there. And now it's just about, can you make that last for a 48-minute regular season game, instead of like, oh, I'm going to try for these 5 minutes because it's my 5 minutes to try in this game, which is what happens in the preseason. I just think what the Magic need to see is they need to see that they've got that base established. Like maybe you lose the game. It's a close game. That's not the end of the world. Not great, but not the end of the world. But you just want to feel like, okay, this base is established. We did the work in the preseason to begin accomplishing our goals. And now we have something to keep building and growing on. And as Jalen Suggs likes to say, stacking days, as it were, as you get to the rest of the season. I think that's what it feels like that's what both teams want to see out of this game.
David, what's at stake for the Heat at this point in the season? First game.
For the Heat or for the Magic?
Yeah, for the Heat.
For the Heat. Well, I think showing something. Again, you want to be able to create an identity early on, because this group seems so difficult to determine exactly what it's like. So for them, it's about establishing a pattern that they can continue to build up. They need to be able to show that they're not going to get punked, because I think, given this group and the composition of it, if they get into their heads a little bit, and if they don't have that one player on this roster who's going to be able to push them and say, you know what, to heck with all this, we're going to keep going, we're going to keep doing something. And again, it's not about the playoffs anymore. It's about just making the playoffs. It's about really having to try.
I'm sorry. This is so much loser talk on this podcast right now. It's just like, yeah, it doesn't really matter. Just if you're going to lose, don't lose by a lot. What happened? What happened to these proud franchises?
Let me change that narrative. For the Magic, this game and Friday's game against the Atlanta Hawks, it's about establishing dominance in the Southeast Division.
Thank you.
It's about telling the second and third best team in the Southeast Division, you are the second and third best team in the Southeast Division.
That's what's at stake here.
The Magic getting out to a 3-0 start. They played their first 3 games at the Kia Center for the first time in franchise history. Getting out to a 3-0 start, beating the Heat, beating the Hawks, beating the Bulls. All 3 teams you're expected to beat. Doing that sends a clear statement, not just to the rest of the division, but to the rest of the league. Because now you go on your longest road trip of the year. You get at Philadelphia, and we're getting a fully operational battle station apparently in Philadelphia. You're going at Detroit, another young team that you got to prove you can beat. You got very winnable games. The Magic in their first, I believe it's their first 8 games, they could very easily be 6-2.
Oh, must be nice, David.
Yeah, exactly.
The Heat's opening slate is brutal, right? It's these teams, and it's a West Coast trip.
Oh, hate those early West Coast trips.
We did the math on this, David. It was like of their first 20 games, like 16 or 17 of them were against playoff teams. It's crazy. You get Cleveland twice, like right when you get back from that West Coast trip. It's wild what happened here. To me, what's at stake here for the Heat is sort of similar to what you're talking about with the Magic, but it's a little bit different, where it's like, hey, Jimmy, we don't need you. That's what's at stake. And I think if you're in that locker room, they're probably not talking about that literally, but I do think that there's that sense of, hey, this is a new era in Miami. We have to start with something real. And you know what's defined almost every era of Miami Heat basketball? Beating the Orlando Magic. And so what a great way to,
at the same time.
Right. And so what a great way to try to start this new era by beating the Orlando Magic. So I think there's a ton at stake in this first game. I really do. And to David's point too, and he's absolutely right. It's like, okay, so what is this offense really? Do you come out of this with a proof of concept? I think that's very much at stake. Or do you come out of this feeling like, yeah, I'm not totally confident in this new system that Spo's trying to make us play? Last thing here, we got a lightning round it. The Heat and or Magic are in trouble if blank. So we're filling in the blank. Finish the sentence. The Heat and or Magic are in trouble if blank. Philip, start with you.
The Heat, the Magic are in trouble if Jalen Suggs is out for an extended period of time. And again, he may not play Wednesday. He probably won't play Wednesday. Tyus Jones is a major weak link on defense. And there just isn't, Anthony Black can play some guard, but he can't play point guard. The Magic have some weak links on defense at the point guard position. And, they're all about their size, and Tyus and rookie Jace Richardson go against that. They both can contribute. They both can add to the team, but Tyus Jones can't be the long-term starter for the whole season. You're not going to achieve your goals. So for the Magic, need to get Jalen Suggs back as quickly as possible.
David, the Heat are in trouble if blank.
Damn, Adebayo doesn't play at an all-star level. He needs to be able to just be the guy who carries this team. He needs to be productive. And for all the little things he does, I was going to say if he's injured, but that's too easy to pick at. And it's just, this is a player who just needs to be better. And this group needs some kind of leadership. And while he might do it on the emotional perspective, he needs to be the leader on the court and be more productive than what he's been in the past.
I'm going to go both here. The Heat and Magic are in trouble if both teams, or if this game is played at a slow pace. Because you've got both teams in the preseason and training camp talking about we've got to play faster. The Heat have spent the last 2 weeks installing a fast-paced system. The Magic have been talking about we got to increase the pace, we got to turn defense into offense, this whole thing. Both teams are trying to move up in pace. Miami was 27th last year in pace. Orlando was dead last 30th in pace last year. Both teams, regardless of the outcome of this game, who wins or loses, I think both teams are in trouble if this thing gets grinded to a halt and we're right back in one of the bottom 3 teams in pace for both of these squads. I think both teams will be in trouble because I don't think, again, regardless of who wins or loses, there's any amount of sustained success coming out of this thing if both of these teams end up at the bottom of the league in pace again this season.
Although I think,
and judging by the 2 preseason games, that's not going to happen. They were both running at each other. And again, preseason's preseason.
That was the case. Yeah, I mean, that was the case last year with the Heat in preseason. They were one of the top teams in pace in preseason, and the regular season came around, and they were like, we don't know what you're talking about. Like, we just went right back to being slow again. It was like as if it never had happened. So, who knows what'll happen here? David, anything else?
No, I think that benefits that. Like, if that pace does slow down, I still think it benefits Orlando. Obviously, they've got the defensive horses. And I think it'll be enough for them to be able to eke out those kind of victories. They'll have those games if the offense isn't running on all cylinders. They're going to have those games periodically throughout the regular season, but they're good enough defensively where they'll still be able to win them. Miami is not.
I just thought of this. Just give me the one-word answer here. Favorite player on the other team, Philip. Your favorite player on the Heat.
I love Bam. I love watching him when we get to Team USA and cheering for him. Like he's such a good glue guy. And obviously, like, I've dealt with so many rebuilding teams that I always tell people, like, these guys have talent. Like, even guys on rebuilding teams have talent. They're just asked to do too much. Bam is asked to do too much, and that's his fault as much as it's the Heat's fault. Like, I think he's comfortable in that role, but I love watching Bam. He's just so good.
David?
Wagner. I think he's fantastic.
Which one?
Which one?
The one who's not always in foul
Mo is
trouble.
more fun to watch.
No, it's Franz.
Watch Mo on the bench on Wednesday.
Fair enough. No, but I think Wagner. I think I was banging the drum last year for him to be an all-star. I thought he deserved it, and then the injury, of course, took some out of it. But he was playing at such a high level. He's such a fantastic player. I think he's one of those young stars that people should know about more often. Maybe he's that kind of niche basketball player that maybe some people know, but not enough people know about his game. Strong Eurobasket performance, etc. Like, he's just a really solid player, a fun player to watch, and I really do like his style of play. So I think it's I know who you're going to pick. That's an easy one.
Who's my pick? Jalen Suggs. Thank you very much.
You've been talking about him. Like, you want him on Miami so badly, it's not even funny.
Since his college days. Yeah, I love Jalen Suggs. He's my Emmy Award winner for most entertaining defender the last 2 years. He's got that award. I love watching that. I can watch that guy just fight over a screen every day of the week. That'll do it for our crossover episode of Locked On Heat and Locked On Magic. Make sure that you're subscribed to both of these channels, Locked On Heat and Locked On Magic on YouTube. Find us on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for listening, and tune in to Locked On Heat and Locked On Magic for post-game reactions.
I want to thank David and Wes once again for coming on the show or having me on their show, whichever one it was you listened to. Hopefully it was mine. I need the hits. But I appreciate them as always. They do a great job covering the Miami Heat. While we don't like the team, we love the Heat podcasters. They are good guys. And obviously our friends to the South. We truly appreciate them. Check out their show, Locked On Heat, for complete coverage of the Miami Heat side of this game. And of course, you can check out for any team across the NBA. There's a Locked On NBA podcast for every team in the NBA. But that's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. You, of course, find me on Twitter at PhilipRR_OMD and on Blue Sky at PhilipRR. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Himalaya, Google Play, Spotify, Odyssey, and all the fun places on all podcasts to your podcast-enabled listening device. You can find us as well on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Magic. And by the way, you can find Locked On Heat at all of those locations and on YouTube. Just search for Locked On Heat. For the latest on the Orlando Magic, be sure to check out OrlandoMagicDaily.com. You can find us on Twitter at OMagicDaily. And for even more Orlando Magic content, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter, the Orlando Magic Hub, at patreon.com/Orlando Magic Hub. As always, thank you for your support. Now that you're done making Locked On Magic your first listen of the day, go make Locked On Fantasy Basketball your second listen of the day. Josh Lloyd hosts the #1 fantasy basketball podcast, giving you daily tips and helping you win your league, all while making you a smarter NBA fan. Find Locked On Fantasy Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, all part of Locked On Podcast Network. That's your team every day. That's going to do it for me today. I want to thank you all again for listening to today's episode of Locked On Magic. Of course, on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic, we will have one game under our belt. One game of 82, maybe 83. One game of 82 under our belt. We'll broadcast from the Kia Center after the game. Hopefully it'll be up around hour and a half, 2 hours after the game ends. Thank you for giving me some time to go do media stuff, and then I record. It takes me about an hour to record after I'm done, but we'll have that all for you on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Magic. Happy NBA New Year, everybody. We'll see you all at the Kia Center on Wednesday for Orlando Magic Daily and Locked On Magic. This has been Philip Rossman-Reich. We'll see you all again next time for another episode of Locked On Magic.